Welcome to The Explainer. So let's talk about why big disasters happen. We're often fed a really simple story, but the truth? It's way more complex and honestly, a lot more interesting.
I mean, think about it. When you see a huge failure, a plane crash, a stock market meltdown, you name it, what's our first reaction? We instinctively start looking for that one simple cause, right? That single smoking gun.
And more often than not, that's where the story ends. The headlines scream about a scapegoat, and the whole mess gets pinned on one person making one mistake. But really, is that ever the whole picture? I don't think so.
All right, section 1, the usual suspect. So let's talk about that usual suspect. Yeah, the blame almost always lands on what's probably the most common and, honestly, the most incomplete explanation for any failure. Human error.
But here's the thing. Safety experts, like the folks at the International Atomic Energy Agency, they'll tell you something crucial. That error you see from the person on the front line, that's not the end of the story. No way. That's just the start of the investigation. The real story, the one that matters, is buried way deeper.
Section 2, a deeper systemic truth. So to get to those real causes, we've got to look past the individual. We need to zoom out and start looking at the entire system that person was working in.
And this is what we call the systemic approach. It's a really powerful way to shift your thinking. Instead of seeing safety as just, not making mistakes, you see it as something that emerges from how everything works together. The people, the technology they're using, and the organization that surrounds them.
Okay, section 3, humans, tech, and organizations. So how does this actually work? Well, we can break this whole system down into 3 main parts. It's sometimes called the HTO model for humans, technology, and organizations.
So let's start with the human factor. And look, let's be super clear. This is not about blame. It's about getting real about human performance. Things like, was the training any good? What was the stress level like? Was the workload just insane? How well did the team actually talk to each other? And we have to face it, we all have limits, especially with things like memory and attention when the pressure's on.
Next up, technology. And this is, it's everything. From the design of a control panel to the software they're clicking through. Is the screen you're looking at clear and easy to understand, or is it a confusing mess? Is the automation actually helping, or is it just creating brand new problems you didn't expect? The big question is, does this tech make it easier to do the right thing, or does it actually set you up for an error?
And finally, we've got the organization. And honestly, this might be the biggest piece of the puzzle. This is the whole context for everything else. We're talking about the real safety culture, not just the slogans on the wall. We're talking about decisions from leadership, the constant pressure to meet quotas, not having enough staff, and whether the official rules are even possible to follow in the real world.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Because all 3 of these things, the human, the tech, and the organization, they all crash together right in that gap between the official plan and what happens in reality.
Safety pros have a really important way of talking about this. They distinguish between the task, that's the official procedure, the thing written down in a binder somewhere, and the activity. That's what people actually do, minute by minute, to navigate all the messy, unpredictable stuff that happens in the real world.
And this is so key. That gap, it's not a bad thing. In fact, that's where people are brilliant. It's where we adapt, because no procedure can ever cover everything. But, and this is a big but, it's also the danger zone. It's in that gap where a hidden flaw in the tech or a bad policy for management can suddenly jump out and create the perfect storm for a failure.
Section 5, a chain reaction of failures. So once you start looking for this chain reaction, this mix of human, tech, and organizational stuff, it totally changes how you see some of the biggest disasters we all know about.
Okay, let's take a look. 3 Mile Island, back in '79, it started with a tech problem, sure. But it got way, way worse because of confusing alarms and poor training. That's the human factor. Then you have Chernobyl. Yeah, operators broke the rules. But why? They were working inside a terrible safety culture, that's the organization, and with a reactor that had catastrophic design flaws. That's the technology. It was a complete cascade. And Fukushima? The whole organization just assumed their tech was strong enough. That belief, that organizational assumption, directly led to them underestimating the risks they were facing.
So you see,
None of these were just one thing going wrong. They were complex, tangled-up chain reactions. And if you just blame one link in that chain, you miss the whole point. You lose the chance to actually learn from it and, more importantly, stop it from ever happening again.
Section 6. Thinking beyond the blame. And this mental model, this way of thinking, it's such a powerful tool. And it goes way beyond just nuclear power plants or crazy high-risk jobs.
You know, after something goes wrong, what's the first thing you hear? Well, people just need to be more careful. But safety experts will tell you that's not just wrong, it's a dangerous way to think. Because listen, most people are trying to do a good job. Just telling them to be careful completely ignores all the stuff in the system that's pushing them towards making a mistake in the first place.
And this approach, it really is universal. It's used in medicine to stop errors in surgery by looking at how the team communicates and how the equipment is designed. It is the absolute foundation of modern aviation safety. Seriously. It even helps us make sense of stock market crashes. You look past the individual traders and at the algorithms, the regulations, the whole system. Heck, you can use this right now in your own job to figure out why some mistakes just keep happening over and over.
Because in the end, the goal isn't to find out who to blame. The real goal is to understand why the system failed, why it allowed that mistake to happen, and from there, how we can build a better, stronger system, one that actually sets people up to succeed and to do it safely.
So, I'm going to leave you with this thought. The next time you see that headline, the one that blames some disaster on human error, what are you going to ask instead? What are you going to look for in the technology, in the organization? What clues will you look for that might tell you the real story?